Welcome to Cinema Gulp, everybody. I'm Ben.
I'm Scotty R37.
I'm Karate Action Ben.
And I'm John. And this is our favorite R-rated action film.
Welcome, everybody, to Cinema Gulp. It's been a while since we've done a best of. I think the last time it was me, John, and Ben doing best R-rated comedies. We're back doing R-rated action movies. Now, this one's hard, guys. This one is hard because action expands to so many different things, as does comedy, but I don't think quite as much. So we're going to go around and everyone's going to talk about their top 5 R-rated action movies of all time. We would love, we'll get to this later, some comments below, because I know there's going to be people from other countries throwing in movies that are not necessarily R-rated here. But why don't we start with Scotty R37, starting from number 5, going all the way down to number 1, everybody. Scotty, what's your number 5 R-rated action movie of all time?
My number 5 action movie of all time is Terminator II: Judgment Day.
Ooh, okay.
Cyberdyne Systems in the flesh. I love that movie. I saw it in theaters, and it was the first time that I saw explosions that big, and just, it was badass action. It's the first of 2 Schwarzenegger films on my list. I think that he informed my action tastes at a very young age. So that is my number 5, is Terminator 2. Just because it is iconic. And I think it's the practical and the CGI crossing over. It was like the beginning of a new era. And at least that's how I took it. So that's my number 5.
This was the first R-rated film that I told my mom, I do not care that I am not old enough to see this. I am going to find my way into this theater. Before that, I would sneak in without telling her. I'd go see whatever R-rated film and not really tell her, come up with a PG option that I went to see. This was the one I said, I don't care what you think, Mom. I am going to see this R-rated movie.
Well, and now when I revisit it, I do go to the extended cut that has sort of the glitchy T-1000 and like all of the Kyle Reese flashback or dream sequence, pardon me. Like, I do enjoy the extended cut, but when I saw it in theaters, it was OG theatrical cut, opening weekend. I think I did a book report on it, and I never read the book. Well, and again, a titan of the action genre at the height of his game, at the height of his superstardom, really. Cameron's amazing as a director, but I wouldn't say he's, well, yeah, I guess he's primarily an action director. Titanic's an action movie, I guess. But no, Arnold Schwarzenegger being such a mainstay during the 80s with Commando and Raw Deal and Predator. And
well, what about, I mean, think about Eddie Furlong's filmography. You have Terminator 2 and
I know you're pointing out how this is an amazing, awesome, kick-ass Arnold movie, but there is another iconic action star in this film, Linda Hamilton.
True story.
Elevated it for all the ladies out there. Elevated what a female action hero, not just a female action hero, an action hero in general. She's one of the best. I mean, probably in the top 5 action heroes, you have Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor. There could be 3 other guys probably, but those 2 are in that top 5 most likely.
Yeah, and Sarah Connor, the thing that's so iconic about her is how unhinged she is. You know, like, she's not traditional. She's not really, she's heroic, but she's more like a survivor, and like some of the questionable shit she does just makes her more badass.
She totally has PTSD in that movie, man. Like, you know, not spoiler alerts, but maybe I watched the film recently too, and I had forgotten how chilling the scene is where she goes to try to assassinate Miles Dyson, and she's just like about to kill this man in cold blood in front of his family. They have no idea why, and it's just a chilling scene, but it's so good. She's so good in that movie.
The way she backs up against the wall and doesn't take her eyes off of him, and it's great performance too. Yeah. Fuck yeah, great pick, Scotty. Do you want to move on, Ben? Number 5, sir.
Well, my number 5 is not Terminator 2: Judgment Day, but we'll come back to that. Mine is 2011's The Raid. And I chose The Raid. It's the only martial arts film on my list because, in a way, martial arts films feel a little like cheating because they're so action-packed all the time. They're just by design. It was the first movie of that kind I had seen before, and by that I mean just a literal, like, non-stop action flick. You get a few moments to breathe here and there, but, I mean, once they hit the gas in that movie, it doesn't let up until the end, and I think that's awesome. a U.S. re-release with an original soundtrack by Mike Shinoda that was really good. I've not seen the original or the film with the original soundtrack, but you can't tell. Like it, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference if I didn't know otherwise. You guys are familiar with his work because I'm not super familiar with his work outside of Linkin Park. But the guy can jam. You know, the guy makes great music. It's got a very kind of like adrenaline feel to it. You know, I mean, like I love the characters in this movie. There's a million characters in the movie, and some of them you meet for 2 seconds and then they're gone, and that's okay. It works in this film, but I love the lieutenant, who I can only describe as an elderly Street Fighter's Guile. There are no Americans in this film. It's an Indonesian film. He is weirdly the most American dude in this film, and he looks like maybe Hulk Hogan's cousin. And it's never addressed, and that's okay with me. But I just think he's great. He's something else. He's fun to watch. He's not in a ton of the film, but he's like the old ass kicker, which is a trope that you know, I think over the last decade it's become more popular. Just like old dudes who can still kick ass, because you know we're all afraid of dying or something. I don't know, but hey, that's what action films are about. Like we cheat death, we rise above death. You know, but what I really dig out of the film is it's got some of the best like blade fight scenes I've ever seen. Like a lot of knife and machete fight scenes, right? Which are way more common in Asian action films than in American action films, where like guns and punching people and stuff, which is cool. You know, go America. But like a knife fight scene requires a lot of choreography, and the Raid is full of great fight choreography, great scenes. There's the one hench guy who takes on the two brothers at the end. His favorite way, like he doesn't want to use guns. He wants to kill with his hands. Like he's just an animal. He's awesome to watch. I think he really wowed people when it came out because no one was expecting anything out of that, like that to come out in Indonesia. Then anything like that was coming out in America. And you know, to be honest, we like basically invented the action film. And I think what the Raid did was tell people that maybe there were more visceral ways to film fight scenes. More like you could like feel the blades going in and out of these guys when they fight. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just really raw and it's fast, and like you're out of breath when the scene's over, man. Go to the Raid. That's why you're mine. Number 5.
Action to me encompasses so many things. There's only really 3 genres of films when I really break it down: comedy, drama, and action. So things like horror often fall under action for me in the broad sense of those 3 categories. Obviously there's subcategories for all kinds of things, but since there were so many things that could fit the description of action, I limited it to just kind of that contemporary feel, kind of like a Die Hard. And because of that, I'm not including Die Hard. Die Hard is the template for what these kinds of films are, but I'm not including Die Hard because it's just everybody loves Die Hard. It's everyone's favorite film. I imagine it might be on a bunch of your guys' lists. So I'm leaving it off just to start with. But my first film, one of the earliest R-rated films that I got a chance to see, with one of the best action heroes around, Rambo. Well, First Blood. This one is First Blood, not Rambo. 1982. It's very intense when it needs to be. I think even at a young age, just that seeing this guy pushed to his limits and the way that, you know, the town was discriminating against him right off the bat over nothing. It's just like you feel all that even as a young age. You're just so much on this guy's side and hating the cops. And Brian Dennehy plays that ruthless guy just so perfectly. So when they finally start chasing him out into the woods, it was just like, for whatever age I was, and I shouldn't have been seeing this, it was the greatest thing ever. I was so in love with those scenes in the woods. And to your point, Ben, there isn't a ton. It's kind of like there's a couple scenes throughout the film, but those scenes are really impactful. And the way he has to dispatch the various cops, I mean, he's not trying to kill them, but a couple of them do get killed or very seriously injured along the way because he's fighting for his survival. My favorite movie being Aliens. I actually really do like survival films. That's kind of the way I see Aliens. Over all the different genres people like to label it with, to me, it's a survival film. And I think this is another one that fits that description. And it also had a very early Predator vibe. You know, long before Predator was a movie, him out in the woods setting the traps and kind of turning the tables and hunting the hunters felt, you know, reminiscent of Predator at an early stage. So I just have always loved First Blood. I'm not a huge fan of the sequels. In fact, the one right after Rambo First Blood Part 2 is probably my least.
It's pretty
favorite.
cheesy.
Yeah, it's pretty cheesy. But yeah, First Blood being one of my first forays into the action genre, I'll never forget it, and I still think it's a great film to this day.
I think that one of the things that makes First Blood such a tense action movie is that you're just waiting for John Rambo to explode. You know, like he's just walking through town. Brian Denny, he starts being a dick. They take him to the thing and they dry shave him. And now PTSD Tasmanian Devil. It's just going off. And you don't know what's going to happen. And you don't know when, but it's going to be awesome.
No, there is good action in it. I think the reason I just said that is because it plays itself out and ends kind of like a dramatic film, you know?
Oh, very much so. But again, it is the rooting in reality that I think John was referring to when not bringing up.
Yeah. So I chose to go the John route from the R-rated comedy one and just pick genres because I had a fucking really hard time with this. So I'm going to start with situational action that is not Die Hard. So I'm going with Speed. I love Speed. Not the drug, never done it before, never even seen it in real life, only on TV. Die Hard cinematographer Jean Dupont just proved out of the gate with his first movie that he can direct something nearly as good as Die Hard, just in a very different setting. I don't like when people call this Die Hard on a Bus because it's actually kind of the opposite of Die Hard in every way. There's nothing about this movie that's like Die Hard. This movie works to Keanu Reeves' strengths, where I feel they took him away from the whiny kind of trying to give him too much to do Johnny Utah, and they gave him Jack Traven, which is like a straight-laced, confident, smart, fierce, focused cop with not that much to say, just a focus, you know? And he works the best that way. Dennis Hopper, oh my God, just chewing the fuck, doing most of his acting in a room by himself, with the exception of the beginning and the end. This movie has this wonderful 3-act structure. I don't know how many times you guys have seen this or if you've seen it lately, but it's such a perfect Granted, the second act is very long, but the first act of the movie is basically this big elevator sequence. And it's very high stakes and it's intense and it's shot really well. And that music kicks in. It's so good. Then the second act obviously is very long. That's the bus. And the bus stuff is amazing. It all stands so good today. Maybe the bus jumping from one side to the next doesn't still hold up. If it ever did, they did all that stuff practically, which is insane. Keanu Reeves got under a bus for real, which is insane. The way they shot that and they rigged up those cameras is insane. Like, there's no fucking way they would do that nowadays. Just zero discussion of that ever happening. Even with a stunt person, forget your lead actor actually getting underneath a bus for a shot. But and then the third act is probably the weakest part because you almost want it to end when the bus situation ends, but it does go to a train and it's a violent. The movie kind of escalates to extra hokiness by that point, but I love the hokiness. I find this movie very rewatchable. I've been rewatching this since I got it on VHS back in, I want to say like 95 or 96. I still love it. I think Jack Traven is a very understated action hero. And this may not be the last time you see Keanu Reeves on my list. So number 5 for me is Speed. I love it. Moving on to Scotty's number 4 R-rated action movie.
Well, if you guys don't want to talk about Die Hard, I will.
Nice.
Die Hard. Well, first things first, let's get the elephant in the room out of the butter. Best Christmas movie of all time. That is my position. If you please at me.
Ben, we have a video he should watch where we did our best Christmas videos.
Yeah.
It's a terrible Halloween movie, I'll say that much.
Thank you, Ben. Agreed. I love it. And again, coming back to the everyman and the survival instinct of being able to go in and rescue the princess and take down the evil person. And it is, you know, you could even put it somewhere in The Raid or Dread in terms of a tower action confined space. I think the performances are fantastic. It's lightning in a bottle based on a novel that could have been derailed by Frank Sinatra's ego.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much about this movie with John McTiernan coming off of Predator, and just there's an action director at the height of his game with Die Hard.
1 year removed from Predator.
And his follow-up film to those two, Hunt for Red October, a true classic in my opinion as well.
Obviously, the late great Alan Rickman, Bonnie Bedelia, Reginald VelJohnson, Bruce Willis, of course. The launch of his career, moonlighting notwithstanding. And again, it's a classic, not just because of it being one of the best action movies of the 80s, but also because of the controversy as to the time of year in which it takes place. Is it a Christmas movie? Is it not a Christmas movie? I just know it's in rotation every December 24th at my place. So I do include it. And it's that sentimentality as well as the bloody violence and swearing. And there's nudity. There's something you don't get very often in an action movie nowadays. Hardcore nudity.
That's the epitome of gratuitous too, when they just break into that office and a girl's boobs are just there.
Are you saying you can't have sex at a Christmas party? That's part of the fun.
There's people doing blow at that party. There's all kinds of crazy shit going on.
I really like it. I like it a lot.
I like it a lot.
That is the first time that I ever saw squibs blow out of a guy's kneecaps, and I was like, oh.
John Wick for 2014 is my number 4 pick. The original John Wick. I prefer the original John Wick because it's a much simpler revenge story. And I'm a fan of the series, but to be honest, with each new chapter, this whole criminal underground thing just gets like a little sillier. Yeah. And what I really like about John Wick is how based in reality it is. You guys brought it up when I mentioned the raid earlier, and I feel like it's a polished raid. It's really a good-looking film. It's shot great. It's got great music, great performances. The fight choreography is next level. What the raid said, like, hey, this is how you can do an action film. John Wick said, this is how you all should do an action film. You know, like it's set this brand new level of what a fight scene can be. He makes the gun feel like an extension of his body when he fights, and he can just go right from blocking a punch, breaking your arm, to blowing your fucking brains out. Like it's, you know, like bada or what have you, man. It's smooth as hell. They're just some of the best fight scenes I've ever seen in those films. And I just love the one because it's just a simple, gritty, I got to get my revenge kind of movie. And it's awesome.
The first one's the best because you don't know what he's capable of until the reveal of what he does to that mass of people in that club. And that's where you see that fighting style where it's like, as soon as he gets you locked and he's holding that gun in one hand, he's doing all the kung fu stuff. But when he gets you locked, your head is gone. He's just going to blow your head off. You know, I agree with you, Ben, that those fighting scenes are fucking so well choreographed and interesting.
I was going to say he was doing it all for his dog, which makes that the first one the best.
Totally. Yeah, that's true. One, I love that they keep the through line of him loving dogs and they give him dogs later on. But the first one, the fact that it's about the dog.
Well, and it makes it much more a visceral revenge plot. Like, you do understand that his wife has died. The last thing that he's ever loved is the dog that she gave him on her deathbed, essentially, right?
Yeah, and they give you just enough time to realize that and feel that, you know.
And then when the dog is gone, like, first things first, like, I'm sure the first studio note on that film was, do we have to kill the dog?
Puppy. Not a dog, a puppy.
A puppy.
That's double downing right there.
If the bad guys kill a dog, the audience will go anywhere your hero is going as well.
Keanu Reeves, I feel he's a good actor. I feel he does better with certain directors and he maybe has some limits as an actor all the same. But I don't feel those limits are reached in a John Wick film, or most of his filmography for that matter. I think it's one of the best stylistic action films ever made, and he's definitely the right man for the job.
Yeah.
Well, if you've seen any of those videos of him actually training on the shooting range and how quickly he moves from different weapons, reloads, all that stuff, that's what impressed me. Like the John Wick movie, I enjoyed it, But I think I saw that video afterwards and realized how realistic not just, okay, you practice some stunts. Like, he can do this in the real world if he needed to, essentially. He could be a real action hero. So I was just that much more impressed. And as the films have gone along and the things he's pulled off from film to film, I know he's really doing it. So it makes it that much cooler.
Yes.
You guys want to talk about Die Hard some more?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about Die Hard 2.
Oh,
The hardest of the Die Hard sequels. I'm sorry, the harder of the Die Hard sequels.
Die Harder. That's what it's called. How can the same thing happen to the same guy twice?
Well, it does. But it doesn't. It is different. That's one thing I really like about Die Hard 2. I think there is enough difference to it, even though we were talking about a lot of films that are labeled as that Die Hard knockoff that came in the years. It took a while for them to start putting those out. It really took till after Die Hard 2 that you got this wealth of Passenger 57, Under Siege, Speed. I'm sorry, Ben. One that I almost put on this list, Jean-Claude's one at the hockey rink.
The hockey game.
I love that one.
What's that called? Yeah, the hockey game one.
Sudden
I
Death.
almost put it on
Sudden
the list.
Death. Sudden Death.
Sudden Death. I almost did a list of 5 Die Hard knockoffs, but I think Die Hard 2, it could have taken the route that any of those films did because there wasn't all these other knockoffs yet. So it could have said, let's keep it simple and put them on a boat. Let's keep it simple and put them in a plane.
He's in a mall this time, kids.
In a mall, at an amusement park. I don't know. There could have been a number of things. And this, at an airport, it just doesn't seem like the obvious choice, but they do a lot of great stuff with it to still keep it to feel like an enclosed location that he obviously could leave it and walk out of it, unlike the building that he couldn't, but they keep him tied to it because of his wife in the sky in the airplane. And I just think that's really ingenious. And I think the way that they play up the stakes of him, her being trapped in this plane in the sky hovering above and doesn't know how they're going to get her down. Once they crash that other plane filled with, little old grandmas from England and just
and little
crash
kids
it right into the ground.
Yeah, and little kids. That's gnarly.
I mean, that's such a gnarly scene and just really raises the stakes once that scene plays out for every plane in the sky. And so I really think it's a really creative sequel to Die Hard. It's a great setup for a sequel. I think it's not as good as the first film, but literally no film is as good as the first one when you're talking about this kind of standard action film. So Rennie Harlin directed this one. I think he did a great job. I think Bruce is still a hell lot of fun. He still really is pulling off the character really well. The whole supporting cast is a ton of fun. The bad guy's great. Who's that?
William Sadler. Yeah.
All right. Yes.
William Sadler's butt is
We do get some extended nudity of William Sadler doing
Sadler's butt. That scene is there to show you that your new villain is a more formidable physical foe to John McClane than, because there's no physicality of John McClane with Hans Gruber. It's all like a wits game,
Mhm.
This one, they're gonna fight. They're gonna fight as soon as you see him doing naked Tai Chi.
Bloody scenes like stabbing the guy through the eye with the
icicle.
Love it.
Getting sucked into the plane turbine and stuff. There's some wonderful kills in the movie. So I've always thought a lot of people talk down Die Hard 2 or even a lot of the sequels in the series to some degree, and that the first one really is on a pedestal that no other very films at all can get to. But I think the second one is a really great sequel, and it could have taken the easy route and picked one of these, like put him just on a plane or whatever, but I think it's a great setting for Die Hard 2.
Funny, we're all on our number 4s.
Yes.
Scotty, John, Die Hard 1, Die Hard 2. Guess what mine is?
Die Hard 3?
Die Hard 3.
Nice.
I've told John this a million times. It's the return of the great John McTiernan, by the way. And like Die Hard 1, Die Hard 3 it's just the tightest of tight scripts. It's so the way it moves and keeps its pacing to perfection. It's just a testament to the direction, the editing, the cinematography, the stunt choreography. They spent the most money on 3. I mean, up until that point, before they, the 4th one came out. I don't think they spent anything on the 5th one. I don't even think that's a Die Hard movie. One thing I love so much about this movie, well, I love a lot of stuff, but the full circle effect. A lot of people talk about this. this was supposed to wrap up the trilogy, and obviously it did for like 11 or 12 years. The full circle effect of a trilogy comes to a head in the third one, where it kind of goes back to elements of part one. And the fact that they took this script called Simon Says, which was not a Die Hard script, and they turned it into a Die Hard script, and then they made the villain Hans Gruber's brother. It's fucking genius. And I remember watching this in the theater. I was like a senior in high school when it came out, and no one knew. It was such a twist, because back then you couldn't, trailers were good, and there was no internet to really like fucking fuck everything up for you. So I just remember the theater going, oh my God, it's Hans Gruber's brother.
Now, do you want to tell me what the hell this has to do with me?
The name Gruber mean anything to you, Lieutenant? He's Hans Gruber's brother.
And then, of course, you get the amazing Jeremy Irons. So if you're going to have somebody to kind of match the charisma of an Alan Rickman in a very different way, they don't act anything alike. They don't look alike, but they're both just like smart ass villains that have their own things about them that you kind of like about them. You kind of sympathize with them, not by what they're doing, but just because you're like, I want to hang out with that person, maybe just once. Like seeing, McClane in the sewer thing, in the tunnel, and it expands the scale for the first time in a Die Hard movie. This was the one where it's like New York City is now like kind of under this terrorist threat, but then again, another cool twist is you find out it's not even a terrorist threat. It's a heist. It's a hoax to pull off a heist. And it's great writing because you don't see it coming. And to me, I said this to John when we did the best of our Bruce Willis thing. This is the last time. I still love McClane in 4, but this is the last one where he's like down in the dumps, and like you first see him, he's hungover, and he's wearing the signature wife beater, and he's like swallowing a bottle of aspirin. You're like, that's the McClane I know. 4, he's still McClane, but he's more like, put together and stuff, so. And that entire like 35 minutes on that boat is some of the best directed action fucking ever. It's so good. Fuck, I haven't even mentioned Samuel L. Jackson, who's just such a great. You finally get like a sidekick who's just not on the phone with McClane, who's actually there, and willing to do all this crazy shit because he's a good person and he wants to do the right thing and he wants to look after his community. Plus, this is the funniest Die Hard movie out of all of them too. Like, it's just got the best comedic dialogue. I love Die Hard 3. It's so good. It's that I love 2 as well, John. I love all 4. 5 is not a Die Hard movie. That thing sucks. It's nothing. But if you're gonna talk about 1 as being this like perfect action movie, it is. I also think 3 is as well.
Well, and going back just to now that we've covered the trilogy.
Yeah. Hey, Ben, do you have
Die Hard
on your list?
Die Hard 1 is my favorite Christmas movie. Die Hard 2 is my second favorite Christmas movie. Die Hard 3 is my favorite Labor Day weekend movie.
That takes place in August. It takes place in August, sir.
But school's in.
I can't believe in the same number we all hit 1, 2, and 3 Die Hards.
And again, mine's not really in order other than like the years they came out, but
don't take this away from us, John.
No,
we just hit a slot machine of Die Hard. This is my second visitation of Herr Schwarzenegger. I'm going with Total Recall.
Oh, so good. So good.
I absolutely adore it. I love the ambiguity of the ending. I enjoy the science fiction elements of it. A lot of my influences just in my youth were science fiction, and when I could get science fiction and guns, that was great, because most of the time I was dealing with phasers or lasers. So when I get machine pistols blowing up people in X-ray machines and like ripping off arms, and like it is Paul Verhoeven at one of his most Paul Verhoevenist. It is a great action movie. The supporting cast, you got Ronnie Cox, you got Michael Ironside. Actually, there's a shared actor in Die Hard 2 as well, because his buddy at the construction site is also Carmine's brother at the airport in Die Hard 2.
Harry.
But
Harry, yeah.
Harry, I forget the actor's name.
Harry is Vito. Yeah.
Yeah. Sharon Stone, obviously, Rachel Ticotin, and so many Star Trek actors. You get Mark Alimo. And also like Ronnie Cox again. Like you get Quato. Like that puppet with a mutant, the practical effect. And again, going back to like no CGI. This is a practical science fiction movie from 1990. So you're not relying on, aside from like computer graphics on a monitor, some of the best makeup effects. It never slows down. It always gets you from location to location to location. And just when you think it cannot get worse, it does. A question at the end of the movie as to whether or not Quaid, having gone to recall to have these memories implanted, despite the threat of lobotomy, there is a question at the end, as opposed to the fading to black, the fading to white. Did he get a lobotomy? It's a thought-provoking gore-fest action sci-fi romp. And there's a lady with 3 boobs.
A lot of people kind of thought of this as like a sci-fi predecessor to like the Bourne Identity, because it has that kind of globe-trotting, I don't know who I am, I'm a super spy type of thing to it. I love Total Recall.
Well,
I think that like it should have won Oscars for makeup design and those visual effects, the miniatures, the way Mars looked. Yeah, I don't even think it was in contention.
So my number 3 is 1991's Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Amazing film. Yeah, a genre game changer for sure, that film. And one of the best examples of how a sequel can potentially be better than the original. But did you guys know that Terminator 2 takes place in the future?
1997, August 29th, 1997.
No.
Of Judgment Day, the day I got that tattoo.
Oh!
Yeah, tiny that.
So I always appreciate that, because in a lot of ways it makes it the most realistic film. This is the action film that takes place in the future, you know? But it's such a great movie. Scott, you mentioned earlier how it has this use of CGI, and it's like right at this nice moment where CGI is like, this is as good as we can get it without completely getting rid of practical effects, because the film is so practical effect heavy and it looks great. I especially love at the end all the giant holes they put into the T-1000. The T-1000 was a marvel to see on screen when this film first came out, and though the film does look dated with its CGI now, it still looks really good. Like, it was lovingly crafted.
Well, and with the CGI and the transition between sort of practical, and I know that there were some moments where the T-1000, there was a stunt double or something that was in long shots with like a Mylar suit just so they could get how light reflected and whatnot. But one of the things that I'm always marveled by is when the 18-wheeler, after they have the big truck motorbike chase, and so then they just and the T-1000 walks, and I think the thing that really sold it was that animated character had weight.
It looks so good. I mean, I just finished watching it the other day. It looks amazing. That's what you would expect to see if they shot that now. Although, to be honest, I stopped watching those movies after the third one, so I wouldn't really know. While films like The Raid and John Wick are really good, I don't feel the story is quite as important to those, where there are really dynamic characters in the Terminator that you feel for, and they are flawed people, and they're just trying to make the best with the worst situation they possibly can. Sarah Connor did her best to prepare her son for the future and ended up ruining his life. And they got to like kind of just deal with it real quick and get past all that. You know what I mean? There's this great moment. I mentioned it earlier when you were talking about Terminator 2, where she goes to assassinate Miles Dyson. And it's just the most cold-blooded thing she's ever done. And she's been pumping herself up for this for like over a decade now. And she can't do it. John comes in with the Terminator, and there's this really short but touching moment between John and Sarah where it's like she was right at the edge of not being his mom anymore, not the person who like actually loves him. Like it's like that's what she's meant to do, is to love him. It's really great, and I always love this about Cameron, where Cameron can really make you feel for the characters and really make his characters dynamic, and you still get these huge action pieces. Something the first two films have in common is they lure the evil Terminators to industrial parks, essentially. And maybe that's where the franchise lost its path, when it gave up on building America.
Like, Ben, you brought up how great when he's freezing and he's trying to walk and he's falling apart, and how great that effect looks.
So fucking
and then
good.
Ben, number 2, you mentioned, well, hey, if they did that today, it would look really great too. We have 4 Terminator sequels that came after this one. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know that any of them did that same exact thing, but all the effects they've employed across those 4 movies, none of them stand up to Terminator 2. So to say that they would make it look better today, I don't agree. I think the fact that you had Stan Winston, God rest his soul, and James Cameron working together, that's why that film and every shot in it, except for the guy rolling.
Innovation is everything. When you're creating something for the first time, you're gonna do the best job you possibly can with it. When you're working with something that's by this point a template, you know, by the time you get to Terminator Dark Fate, all you have to do is punch in some keywords and be like, hey, you know, can we put this character in this CGI scene and blah, blah, blah. It's a lazy way of doing it, where James Cameron was innovating the industry. So of course it was going to be perfect.
Moving on to my number 3. So next we have Die Hard 3 from 1991. Does that confuse you?
Yes.
Well, there is a Die Hard 3 in 1991, and none of you are even aware of that, are you? The movie's actually called Ricochet. It is a Die Hard sequel because of the character Gail Wallens, played by Mary Ellen Trainor.
Hey,
This is a shot from Die Hard.
that's the
She's
mom
also
from
in all of
Monster
the
Squad.
Lethal Weapon movies, and I think she was the wife of Richard Donner, correct?
Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay, sorry.
She's the wife of Zemeckis.
Oh, right.
She is the same news reporter in Ricochet that she is in Die Hard. Her name
love
is
you, John.
Gail Wallens.
I love you so much.
So I had no fucking clue.
So therefore, Ben, you were wrong. Your third favorite movie is Die Hard 4. My favorite is Die Hard 3, called Ricochet.
Anyway, why don't you get to why you like Ricochet?
Because of Gail Wallens.
Because of Gail Wallen.
I mean, a big part of it is
John Lithgow. Obviously.
John Lithgow. John Lithgow is fucking awesome as the villain in this movie.
He is.
Earl Talbot Blake.
Yeah.
He's a very memorable villain. He's very sadistic and ruthless in this thing. I just love him. You know, what other movie do you get the opportunity to see John Lithgow and Jesse the Body Ventura having a gladiator death match covered in phone books as armor? That's just badass in itself. But I love the story in this movie. I think that's the strongest point, is its script. The cat and mouse game that's played between these two characters. And really, it's more of a cat batting around a mouse kind of thing. Like, the mouse is not getting any victories along the way until the end. But Denzel is an awesome hero in this movie and is able to turn the tables, by the end. But he has to persevere through a lot of shit in this movie. And I just love what they put him through. I really buy into how he's able to twist things around to make Denzel look guilty in so many different situations in this movie. Him with the hooker, like some of that stuff where he records his voice at a meeting and then plays that over the hooker. Yeah, I don't totally buy that. I think people would be able to go, that doesn't seem like she's saying that. You're not saying anything. I love Lithgow and how evil he is. He's got some great lines in the film. In the beginning, when he captures the girl they're at like a carnival or something. He's having a standoff with, I think it's in this image right here with Denzel. He's like, her boyfriend's gonna have to put a bag over her head when he what's left of her. That's a great line.
Yeah.
One of the he's in prison, and one of the guards asks him when he's getting ready for his parole hearing, did you remember to floss? And he's like, yes, I did. With your wife's pubic
hair. Yeah.
But I also just love it on a filmmaking level as well. I think it's done really well. It's Russell Mulcahy, who I can't think of all the other films that he's done that are any good. He did like Highlander, he did Razorback. again, my way of looking at things, thriller falls under action in the broad sense of
perfectly
things.
fine. I was fucking with you at the beginning.
No,
I saw this movie like maybe 2 or 3 times in the theater, like, and I agree with you. When you first see, this was the world's first introduction to John Lithgow, who would go on to be one of the most menacing people in the industry when he wanted to do bad guys. Admit it, John, you love this movie because of Odessa, because of Ice Cube, or no, not Ice Cube, Ice-T.
Ice-T. Yes. No, Ice-T's actually good in this one.
And watch for the ricochet. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It really works with the screenplay as well. The way we start off the opening scene is the two of them playing basketball, and he realizes, hey, you're boosting cars, I'm a cop, we really can't continue this relationship. But the way that he's able to bring that back, a couple times throughout the film that they have to interact, and then he's there to bring it all together at the end. And
it has like it has a legal drama element to the story. Because he's trying to be a district attorney.
Yeah. So who did the score for Predator? Is that Alan Silvestri?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the same, and it's very reminiscent, almost like just taking the Predator score and changing only a few minor things. James Horner did that a lot with his scores and stuff, but it really works in this movie. It almost works better than it does in Predator. I mean, there obviously aren't the exact same scores, but they're so similar that
all the action guys did that. Kamen did that.
Yeah.
Zimmer does that. They all do that. Yeah.
But Die Hard 3 with a ricochet, my favorite.
I'm moving on to my sci-fi action movie, The Matrix. The Wachowski people, or whatever they're called now.
Siblings.
Whatever.
Wachowski siblings.
This was the last film I saw before I left for boot camp. And like most people, I had little to no idea exactly what it was about the first time I saw it in theater. And it made that first viewing of it so much fucking better for not knowing what the hell it was about. And John, we did a whole thing of the trilogy of this, so I'm just already kind of saying the same thing. But sometimes like action is something that, to me, it's like, if it's something you've never seen before and it just catches you off guard, and a minute later you're like, God, I literally couldn't take my eyes off that. Like, I was hypnotized by that action. This was that movie. It really did that for me, where I was like, I think I know the story. It's a little heady. I'm liking these people I'm seeing, and then they keep jumping back into this other world, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. But the action is so good. And I love that they just keep the action scenes going and going and going. And they build and they build and they get more intense, and they bring in more characters for each action scene. The Matrix is so influential. Once people got it and it started making money, there was a billion Matrix ripoffs too. And I'm not saying Equilibrium was. It wasn't. Equilibrium was actually filming at the same time the Matrix was. But there was a lot of movies that tried to not just capture the martial arts style and the camera work and stuff like that. And the camera work wasn't the only thing that blew me away about The Matrix. It was just the way the story was told. And I think Lawrence Fishburne has a lot to do with that. Like, if you cast somebody differently, which I guess they originally had Sean Connery.
Oh my God.
Sean Connery was supposed to be Sean Connery and Will Smith. And I can't even fucking imagine Sean Connery and Will Smith in this movie.
Oh my God.
You're the one now, dog.
Yeah. Every big idea in this movie is expressed through Morpheus and expressed through Lawrence Fishburne, who's just, I'm sorry, am I stupid to say, like, why not get an Oscar nomination? I thought he was so fucking good in this movie. Like, everything about his performance. I don't think it was one note. It was very mysterious and maybe a little understated at times, but I don't know. To me, when an actor captures you for the entire movie and like you're just waiting for him to speak, that says something. But I don't give a fuck about Oscars anyway, so who cares? Moving on. Digress. The Matrix just captured me, and it just like, it took me to a place, and it made my jaw drop on the floor when I watched, especially the last like 45 minutes. It's just, nothing's really ever done what that did. The way, like, just the way the action's so fluid, and like it was still a lot of practicality with so much of the stunts. I mean, they had CGI stuff, but it's just such an impressive movie. The sequels are dog shit. I hate them. If you want to know more, me, John, and the Helmets did an entire breakdown of the original trilogy. I'm just talking about this one as a self-contained film. It's a masterpiece. I love it. Love it. So Matrix is what I'm picking today is my sci-fi action movie. It's fucking great. Sorry.
Motherfucking titty sucking two ball
Well, we've talked about this before, Ben. Con Air. Fucking Con Air.
Nice.
I am disappointed in all of you that none of you have put it on the list yet.
It was close.
But I have to say it is. No, I know. I'm not actually angry.
Now,
But no, it's.
Now, is that a Die Hard situation? Sorry.
Well, when anyone is trapped, doesn't automatically make it
That's
a
what I'm
Die Hard
saying.
situation. But if you'd like to learn more, head over. We did a weekly gulp on it, didn't we? Or did we do a full on?
We did a fucking commentary, the entire movie.
I
for its 20th anniversary date.
But yeah, so if you'd like to like totally go into depth as to how I feel about it and how Ben feels, like how all of us feel about it, yeah, I would go check out that video. But no, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's fun. I think there are stakes. I think it is a star-studded cast,
Yes.
a cavalcade of the late '90s. Our boy Nicky Seed and Nicolas Cage is always a welcome presence. The music. Like, there's nothing about that movie I don't like. If I had it on, it's almost up there with Shawshank. It's just like if it's on, it's a remote, it's a remote drop. It's just like, and I was arguing with myself about whether or not I was going to put on like Face Off or something. And it's like, no, it's rated R. It's one of your favorite action movies. Just put it in there. And I appreciate John, you saying, did it earn its R rating? It's kind of a bubblegum R-rated action movie,
Really?
but that's also why I like it.
The Steve Buscemi scene alone, like with the kid.
He doesn't do anything. It just gets weird and trippy.
Okay.
What about
Like,
Dave Chappelle being dropped out of an airplane?
That was
Yeah,
fine.
That's great. Yeah.
Now I have a machine gun. Ho ho ho.
Dude, they're just murdering everybody in that motorcade. They're just fucking killing everybody.
Well, guys, I hate to be the one that has to point out, the rape guy. Like,
Johnny
rape
23.
You don't really
Yeah,
do that
Jen-
in PG-13 movies.
That's right. Johnny 20.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is that like Danny Trejo
Danny
playing that?
Trejo. Good,
Yes, it is.
Good point, man. You can't have that character even acknowledged.
Yeah.
If you'd like to learn more, head over to the Cinema Gulp channel where you are
Oh, yeah.
currently and check out the video where we talk about Con Air and all of its awesomeness.
Was Don Simpson still alive for that one?
No,
No, he had passed
died
already?
about a year and a half before that. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. He died during the Rock filming.
Like during the filming?
I think so. Yeah.
Blown to sea, vaporized.
Blown, I think, is part of it. I think some blow possibly.
had to
Oh,
go
that's
there, John.
too
That's
funny.
staying in. That's staying in.
Just for the groan.
Poor Don. I know Don Simpson wasn't a model human being, but boy, was he a great action producer.
Yep.
My number 2 was a difficult decision because it was almost my number 1. But my number 2 and 1 were very easy choices. I think Dredd takes the idea of an action film and art over its fucking head. It's a piece of fucking art that's just adrenaline and rawness and roughness. And I actually saw this movie. I saw this movie in theaters twice. Great action scenes. And The Raid was my number 5 pick, and Dredd's my number 2 because it's The Raid polished. It's The Raid smoothed out with like bigger stunts and explosions, and I love it for all those reasons. And Carl Urban is amazing in this film, along with The Boys now. But like this film specifically shows why this guy should be an action leading man, like starring and things.
New Zealand national treasure for sure.
My second favorite, Dr. McCoy.
What I love about Carl Urban is he had no vanity in this movie. He did not need to have his. That's the thing about the Marvel movies is like everybody wants their face thing to come off so that they can be on screen. Like he is fucking Dredd with the helmet on the whole movie. He never takes it off.
No, you're right. He never does, and that's how. I've not read a lot of Dredd comic books, but that's how the comic book is. And I know the fans of the comic really wanted that. And while that wasn't important to me, I think it does strengthen the character. Like the idea of this character a lot, that he is the law. Like this guy's entire drive is his perception of justice. And that's a theme in a lot of action films, but there aren't nearly as many characters like Dredd that will take it to such an extreme while still being the good guy, not really crossing that line. You know, still, I mean, his justice is very extreme, but he, you know, never goes outside the lines. In fact, actually, one of my favorite aspects of the film, and a few scenes later in the film, are when dirty cops come into the building.
Yeah,
and that's really great because
the best scene. Yeah,
I like this because it's judge versus judge, and in some weird ways, it's almost like Predator versus Predator. I mean, I love Dredd's gun because it's designed. If you pick it up and use it, it doesn't read his DNA. It makes your fucking hand explode. It's awesome. They're so advanced. They're like, I mean, like Dredd's almost like RoboCop. They're just advanced hunter killers. It's awesome watching a bunch of different judges take each other out towards the end of the film.
That's a great pick, Ben. I fucking love that movie, man. It's so entertaining from start to finish. And that slow-mo stuff, it's really disturbing. Like what's her name? Mama, yeah. It is so disturbing the way she will like put someone on that and then throw them. Oh, because I guess the whole thing is it makes you feel like you're doing that for like a certain amount of years or something. Like she put like, those guys in fear for years. Like,
Judgment time.
Let's finish this.
I'm the law.
This is the culmination of my first three picks.
Yep.
First Blood, starring Stallone. Die Hard 2, directed by Rennie Harlin. And Ricochet, with the villain played by John Lithgow. We have Cliffhanger, 1993. Thank you, Ben, for calling a perfect and almost perfect film. This movie starts out so intense. That opening scene where he's trying to save that woman's life on the rope.
And he doesn't. Spoilers.
Still, every time I watch it, it's just as intense. It's
anxiety. It's anxiety.
You hope that he can save her every single time, and
he doesn't.
It never works out. But yeah, I think this is Rennie Harlin's best directed film. But I love Cliffhanger also for being a Die Hard ripoff, but one that does it really well and doesn't feel, you don't necessarily immediately think of it as a Die Hard ripoff because, you know, set in a mountain, it's not this enclosed space, but it still has kind of the elements of the Die Hard tropes. And I think out of all those ones that came after Die Hard 1 and Die Hard 2, when they really just started pumping them out, this is really one of the best ones. I think the effects in this movie still hold up. There's definitely some shots that don't, but there's a lot that really does work in this movie, and it's just always a fun watch. John Lithgow is another great villain in this movie. I think he's better in Ricochet, definitely more menacing, but he still brings it in this one and is great. Michael Rooker is a great character in this one, a lot of fun. Stallone's just excellent, his typical action hero elements that he brings, but he's really great in this one. It's got a good story, a good backstory to get us into, you know, why these people are where they're at. The heist element going wrong just sets up this wonderful little Die Hard on a mountain movie, and I love it every time I watch it. Love the intensity all throughout. It does have some pretty good violence. You know, a number of people are dispatched in pretty bloody ways, showing you something that we know is not real, but making it feel believable, like a helicopter hanging off the edge of a cliff and two guys fighting on it to the end. Like, some of that stuff is just very over the top, but it's the way it's shot and the practical effects that are used that for the sake of the movie, you're able to buy into it. And I think Cliffhanger does a great job. Well, you've already done enough Die Hard ripoff for your genre.
I never even thought. I hardly think of this one that way. I guess like Die Hard and the Rockies. I guess. It's weird to put it where I have to put it because it's a noir action movie. It's not necessarily full of action, but the action scenes are amazing. And it happens to be my favorite movie of all time. Strange Days, directed by Catherine Bigelow. the action scenes that are in it are fucking breathtaking, and probably the first, well, nowadays you have this very simple device called a GoPro that you could put on your chest, but back then Catherine Bigelow and her crew actually had to create a gigantic camera rig to do the first 5-minute opening scene of that movie. And if you guys have seen Strange Days, it's one of the most breathtaking 5 minutes of cinema, because it's just a perspective of someone who you never see, who's a despicable human being, who says very racist things, but you're kind of wanting to get away from the cops, all because of her direction in that movie. I hate to gender things, but my favorite female character of all time is Mace from this movie, played by Angela Bassett, who may be my biggest crush in the world, you know, even today, like looking pretty much the same as she did in this movie. You remember that time in the 90s, you had like your 93 to 97 where it was like, The Crow is a big example of this, where you had like kind of like these darkly lit nightclubs that you don't know if they really exist. It feels like a fantasy nightclub. The villains and their minions, and like they're after you, and there's the girl with the bleached white hair, and she's got the dueling guns. And you know, Lenny Nero, played by the great Ray Fiennes, like was the opposite of an action star. He was kind of like somebody that might have, the thing I love about his characters, he might have been an action guy, but we never see it. We only hear about it. You know, like, and that's the coolest thing about how his character's written, is he was somebody heroic, but now he's just kind of this sleaze. Yeah, not sleaze. He still has a code of ethics. And all the action stuff comes from this just jacked the fuck up Angela Bassett as Mace. And this was just a beautifully written, like, female character that longed for her best friend, Lenny. She wanted to be with him. She was in love with him. So her vulnerabilities are right there. So all the action in the movie stems from her trying to like save him and protect him, because he's not, Ray Fiennes doesn't play him as a drunk. You never see him drinking or doing drugs, but he's a manic personality type where he's constantly like moving his eyeball. Yeah, John, you know what I'm talking about. Like he's like a swindler. He's constant. He doesn't know how to sit still. So therefore he can't really like figure out a correct thought for what's happening with this like murder mystery. And it's another one on our list that is actually set in the future. It's set in 1999, but it's made in 1995. Let's point out some of the similarities of the film you're talking about that's set in the future, but it's also still kind of in the 90s. And the strong female character. Why does this female character exist in this movie? Who was the writer of this movie? James Cameron. James Cameron. That's why you have a three-dimensional, well-rounded female character who is strong and action-oriented, but not like a Mila Jovovich just to be there. No. The action's great, but it's secondary to how great the story is of this movie and how great the characters are. But the ending of this movie with the great Tom Sizemore, oh my God, legendary Michael Wincott. Again, another kind of like Crow thing where it's like he's again in this like dark, smoky nightclub. I think the thing I love about the action in this movie is it's so colorful, and the way Catherine Bigelow like takes the camera and rotates everything. You know, some people these days, they love to cut action so that you can't see if somebody lands a kick or a punch. The mystery's great. The story is great. The way it unfolds, it's devastating and gross. And this movie got a lot of controversy for its like treatment of women, but thank God it was directed by a woman, so they kind of got away from some of that. But there's a number of intense scenes, especially involving women, that help this movie earn its R rating. So it fits right in with what we're talking about. Very R rated. And it's very R-rated. Yeah, there's scenes in this movie that are beyond R-rated. Yeah. So
well, and also if you're a fan of cyberpunk, it is one of the definitive cyberpunk films.
I saw that movie. I saw the beginning of that movie in elementary school, and I didn't try to watch it again until high school. Man, it's quite the start to a film.
R-rated action film.
Motherfucking titty sucking two ball
Number one. Well, and I suppose, Karate Chop Ben is going to be on my side for this one, but my number one film of all time is Mama is Not the Law. I am the law.
Judge
saw
Dredd
that-
from 95?
Dude, my number one is Dredd. I saw this in the theater in 3D, and I was absolutely blown away. I had sort of been casually looking at the comics, and I knew that Judge Dredd was the travesty. But again, I have a soft spot for Judge Dredd, so don't say an unkind word about Judge Dredd. But I went into it and I was like, this isn't going to be the same thing. It's obviously not the same thing. I can tell the difference between trailers. And so I went in and I watched it, and what I forget the name of the motorcycle, but the lawgiver is the gun. The lawmaker is the motorcycle. And going through practical sets, or at least practical streets, of course, there was sort of matte paintings and CGI backgrounds. But in Cape Town, South Africa, the production of it, going in to, and again, this is not necessarily an elevation of strong female characters for the sake of that. It's not a bumper sticker. Olivia Thirlby in Dredd is awesome.
She's adorable.
She's great. Well, not only adorable, she is exploited heavily. There's a dream sequence where she is assaulted sexually, naked, and it's like, and then she turns the tables on the perpetrator who is attempting to startle her, but she's a psychic.
She's not a victim.
Yeah, she's not a victim.
To your point, yeah. I do remember that character from some of the comics I read, and specifically in the Dredd Predator crossover. That I think it is that character touches some Predator blood and has a vision. But Scott, you would know better than me.
Yeah, but there are psychics in the comics. There are mutations in the post-apocalyptic world that is Mega City 1. And so those things do occur. And it is very much like The Raid. I know that there was a comparison when they were released, but they were sort of not twin movies, but they were movies that were sort of just concurrently made without any idea of one another existing.
I think they're called concept cousins.
That makes, you know what, I like that term, a concept cousin. I like that. Someone's making, and how do you make it? Well, you set it in a building. Okay. Obviously, Carl Urban with the helmet on. The world building was fantastic. Lena Headey as Mama is, just one of the most terrifying. I like a relatively unknown Domhnall Gleeson playing like the ginger mullet tech nerd who is terrorized by Mama. So many brilliant action sequences, and of course there's going to be the CGI at this point. Like, we can't fall back on practical effects, but the way that they're used, the filming of it, the use of CGI, the slow-mo, everything about it is intense. And then you even get the dirty judges and the resilience of the hero who's not going to be defeated. Like, he even gets shot at one point. He's out of bullets. He's got nothing. And the villain, spoilers for Dredd, says, you can't kill me. If you kill me, if I die, this entire building is going to explode. And he's like, I kind of think I know the range of your explosive device. And she's like, are you willing to take that gamble? And he's like, yeah. And the slow motion, like with the guns and everything, when the guys are on slow-mo, he forces the slow-mo into her so that she can experience her own death slower.
So, Scott, I work as a sound mixer, on TV and stuff sometimes. And when he said that line in the theater, I was the only one in the theater that really got it, because I've been fucked like that on jobs because of concrete and range, and I don't give a shit how far in the future it is. they established that was a radio frequency they were using, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be a great way to end the film. And it was awesome. It's a great ending to that film.
But there's so much tension in Dread that I absolutely, that was the last action movie that I saw in a theater, and I was like, fucking A.
The sentence is death.
Well, my number one is Mad Max Fury Road from 2015. What I really love about Mad Max is something we didn't really talk about yet on this list. A lot of these films are franchise films. You know, maybe the first film. I'm not sure if a sequel. No, we've had sequels. We had all the first 3 Die Hard films. Or as I like to call it, all Die Hard films.
Don't forget Die Hard 3 from 91.
Ricochet.
Because this is the 4th Mad Max film, the world of Mad Max is established. Like, you're going in knowing what you get in this movie, okay? So, starts right off the bat. Max is there. He starts getting chased by war boys, and we go from there. This film hardly ever stops, taps on the brakes a little bit, constantly is going. It's just great. And what's best of all is it's art, man. The use of colors in this film is great. And actually, that's the only reason it beat out Dread for me, is that it has a better use of colors. Great color use in Dread, don't get me wrong. But there's something about these giant wide vistas of like brown and then blue and then fiery explosions and like these white war boys crawling all over giant vehicles, man. The use of colors in this film is something else. And then the action scenes are just amazing. When Furiosa is first pulling away from the war party and they go into this sandstorm, and in the sandstorm of the future, they're more like tsunamis, and there's all these twisters and cars getting picked up and exploding and war boys flying through the air and landing on the ground so hard, you know, and it looks really good. And I know some of it's CGI, but so much of that film is not. It's just cars being destroyed and wrecked.
Yeah, it's mostly not CGI. Yeah.
Most of it's not. No, I think I'm mostly referring to just the body shit in the ground is some of that CGI. But I mean, the cars themselves, no, they're all exploding. They're all driving. It's a great film for those reasons, and such great characters. I love Max. I love Furiosa. And Mortem Joe's one of the best on-screen villains I've ever seen, as far as just I'm evil. You don't need to know much more than I'm evil. Nuts is one of my favorite characters in the film, hands down. Nuts in a weird way.
Nicholas Holt's character? A lovely day. What a lovely day. What a lovely day. That guy?
Witness me.
Witness me.
He's so fucking good, yeah.
He's so good. And, you know, like, the Mad Max films, just because of what they are, have something to say about society we live in now and what it could lead to. And I mean, being from a small town in the Midwest and where guys are obsessed with cars, I was like, yeah, I could see nuts. I get nuts.
Come on, let's get nuts.
So there's so many wonderful things about that film. The soundtrack is the next level too. Every song just complements the action on the screen so well, and I especially love the war party's band with the Duke Warrior with the guitar.
Oh my god!
Flames,
so that reminds me of like Slipknot right there.
It does. I've never seen anything like that in a movie ever, and it's just so fucking cool.
And that's why it was in competition with Dread, is that for the first act and a half of that movie, I don't think I've ever held my breath longer.
Yeah.
It was just edge of seat. I can't believe what I'm seeing, and I'm enthralled. A majestic tour de force of an action movie. And yeah, as you said, they pumped the brakes.
Well, and the person that directed that movie was technically a senior citizen while directing.
Doesn't look like that. Doesn't look
right.
Like
That's what I'm saying. It's like, how the fuck did that happen?
Also from the director of Happy Feet.
He has a very diverse filmography.
He does.
No, he seriously does.
But he goes all the way back to the first Mad Max, which was a commentary on the origins of Australia as being like a prison colony, and like the fact that can it fall back into that in like a post-apocalyptic world type thing where now everyone's just running mad. And I love that was a thing that George Miller did with the original movie. And I think the Road Warrior is vastly superior to Mad Max personally, but
but I do appreciate the perspective of societal decay from an Australian.
it wasn't really till the Road Warrior where you saw like the world's just decimated, because there's
Mad Max is the ending is there, and there are people trying to hold on to society, and it's appropriate that that's what that film is, because once Max loses his family, he doesn't need society anymore, and then the rest of the films really reflect that.
And the character you get in Mad Max Fury Road, he doesn't really reflect that, because now you have Tom Hardy, and it's almost like, and I was fine with this. It's almost like it went James Bond, where it's like, okay, well, now there's just a different guy playing it. The backstory doesn't really matter as much. He gives you a little bit of like, he's like, the world's crazy. Maybe I'm crazy, but he doesn't really go into the Mel Gibson backstory. And that's actually a good thing. I think more movies should do that with iconic characters. Like, find someone that's suitable for it and move forward and do new stories.
So my wife and I were talking about this when we were watching Fury Road, because she was curious about this too. And I read one theory that I like and kind of seems to explain this, is that, so basically Mad Max, the first film happened, and then maybe the Road Warrior happened. But
it's all
at
myth.
some point, it's myth. It's apocrypha, where this man named Max brought a sort of justice to the wasteland. Yep. And that's actually how Beyond Thunderdome ends. Think about this too, though. The pilot in the second film is the pilot in the third film, but they're two different characters. If you look at that, and then you look at the last one with Tom Hardy, it almost makes sense that they get further away from what was the real Mad Max, in the beginning of the franchise. I like that a lot, actually. I think that's a really cool thing. That
I do too.
Towards the advantage, yeah.
It's mostly Furiosa, that's driving the story in Fury Road. It's not him. He's kind of just fucking tied up most of the movie. And John, another fucking Tom Hardy movie where he's got a goddamn thing covering his face.
If I were to give the two action movies that I've seen in theaters that absolutely enthralled me, it would be Dread and Mad Max Fury Road. Those two are the ones in the last, 10, 15 years that I've seen that are just these are the ones that blew my socks off in the theater.
So I just want to say, though, so Ben, you don't need to apologize. I forgive you. We all make mistakes. And I actually really like, because this is the action top 5, how contentious and angry this has been. To that point, Scott, I really
I've never liked you.
I've never wanted to rip you guys' heads off more than I did tonight.
So, but to that point, Scott, I really appreciate having my back on this. And like you said, Mad Max Fury Road is one of your top 2, except it wasn't. So fuck you, bro.
Well,
yeah, no, fair enough. Witness me.
No, but witness me, Ben number 1. I got your back, because I don't really care for Mad Max Fury Road. I mean, it looks great, but it's kind of whatever.
It's a beautiful
story. It's a beautiful film.
It's a beautiful orchestra of practical stunts, but there's not a lot of heart behind it.
It's an amazing spectacle.
Oh, Ben just is never going to talk to me again.
I know, I'm sorry, but I just had to make that point.
Okay, so first things first, when you watch Mad Max Fury Road, who's the main character? Is it Mad Max? No. Who is the main character of Dread? It is Dread. So there's a plus, and I don't think I need any more. But it's one of those things where it is, you follow the conviction of the character throughout the story, whereas when I go into Mad Max, I am taken away by the spectacle.
Maybe he doesn't have to be the lead character. I want to say Beyond Thunderdome was probably the best example of that before Fury Road, where it's like, what is this movie about? What is happening? Well, that movie, I think, is kind of dog shit personally, but it's you could, if you didn't, work at the pace of George Miller and you put these out every 2 or 3 years, you could actually find a structure where there's a pace to this, and Mad Max just finds himself in another situation, and then here's what's happening, and there's fast cars and great stunts.
So we are going international. We're going back to Asian cinema. And my pick is right here. Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. Drifting forward, drifting backward, drifting sideways, drifting 360, drifting out of control. Oh, fuck. Han finally eats shit and dies while drifting. No, so let me show you the real pick here. I'm just embarrassed to show the poster for the movie because it is one of the most embarrassing posters for an awesome action movie.
I can't wait.
Here we go. Ba-boom. Hard Boiled.
Oh,
John
yeah, Hard
Woo,
Boiled.
1992
Love that
John
movie.
Woo action film. Admittedly, it's not the greatest film overall. It's narrative. There's some cheesy. I mean, right there's some cheese in this movie, and it can be clunky at times. But the action is unmatched. I mean, other than James Cameron, in my opinion, no one has shot action scenes as good as some of the.
I don't know if a movie has earned its R rating more than this movie, too, as far as violence.
There's a lot of violence in this movie.
Is that a baby?
It's a baby. Chow Yun-fat is a badass in this movie. He's so fucking cool. But yeah, the movie towards the end, there's this like 40-minute action scene that takes place in a hospital, and it gets to a point where he has to rescue all the babies. And there's some insane. If you've seen Face Off, which was another John Woo movie,
I have.
It's very similar in the scene where he's trying to rescue the baby during the shootout.
Yeah.
Which is also John Woo. It was just him redoing the scene in an American film. This one doesn't have as many doves as its other film. Ben, number 2. Did you say you have not seen this or don't know about this movie?
No, I've never been aware of this film.
Oh, you would love this movie, Ben.
Okay, you guys, being a fan of The Raid, this is a very early version of like nonstop action when the action is taking place. It's not a film that like once it gets going and you're in this location, you can't stop. It's a cop, action film where they have a shootout, go back to the precinct and investigate this or that. That's the slow parts of the movie that you could care less about. I almost just don't even watch them these days. I just watch the 6 or 7 action movies in this movie, or action scenes in the movie that are just amazing. The practical effects being used, the choreography, the way that he keeps the John Woo shoots things in such a fluid manner compared to what you get nowadays with I think most of everything that we've discussed is the kind of action I like. You can see it and it's really shot well and choreographed well, but there's a lot of stuff that they put out in today's movie world that they just want this quick cutting and close camera work so you can't tell what's happening. They purposely, the filmmakers know they don't know how to shoot an action scene, so they let the editor chop it up into something that feels exciting but really isn't. You lose all the visceral feeling of it in a lot of modern films. But John Woo was an expert at what he was doing in Hard Boiled. He had made a couple, I don't know how many films he made before this, but he had made a couple. Chow Yun-fat and him teamed up together doing some awesome work. But this is their high point. This is still, in my opinion, John Woo's best film, even with all of his American efforts. But there's just so many amazing action moments in this. There's badass villains in this. There's another hero, Tony Liu. I know he's in a ton of other things, but I can't think of what they are. I want to say he's the dad in Shang-Chi, the kind of villain dad in Shang-Chi. So you guys have all seen him. He's in a ton of things. He's the other kind of hero in this movie. They both do an excellent job. For the two of you who haven't seen this movie or heard of it, have you seen Hard Target, the Jean-Claude Van Damme action film from like 93, I think?
John, I appreciate the fact that you are drawing attention to Hard Boiled. I do not necessarily want to talk about my second favorite Lance Henriksen movie.
Well, all I'm pointing out is that is also John Woo. That's John Woo's first American feature.
Yes, it was.
And if you like what you saw in the action scenes in that film, that's a lot of what you get here. It's the debris, the practical effects with just constant debris and shrapnel flying at the actors. And you're like, how do they shoot this without fucking up everyone's face? Sparks flying, every shotgun blast has just massive sparks and shrapnel and glass flying everywhere every time they shoot something in this movie. But it draws you into that action, so you just find it so believable and realistic, but also unrealistic because you've got people surviving these things that you're like, there's no way anyone could have survived that. But the way it's shot, you believe it. And I think that's key to making a great action film. Put something on the screen that shouldn't be believable, but you make it seem believable.
I don't really care for his American movies like that much. I mean, Face
I
Off.
love Face Off.
Face Off is a guilty piece of shit pleasure.
Those are brave words for a guy who's only ever had one face.
So my final category is action espionage, and this one is from a person who I think after this film was never really the same, and definitely took a lot longer to produce any other works. And this movie is True Lies. Arnie at his best, as far as acting goes, at his best. This is
If
where
you say
Arnie...
Last Action Hero, I'm gonna fall in love.
No, True Lies is the better version of Last Action Hero, where Arnie is in full like self-parody mode, but not to the extent of like he's still playing a character, but he's like, I'm a computer programmer. It's like, no, dude, you're 300 pounds. You're not a computer programmer. But we just believe it because it's a movie. Tom Arnold steals every scene in this movie that's dialogue driven. He's so funny in this movie, and he's so well needed in this movie because this movie is about the ridiculousness of being a spy and being this gigantic buff guy. And Tom Arnold is the guy he's the audience saying like, dude, look at you. Like, why would your wife like fucking buy any of this bullshit? It's the only time that Arnold Schwarzenegger ever actually feels like he's reading from a script where he really devotes himself to the script and the character, and he wants it to work for what it's trying to do. And I think that has a lot to do with Cameron and the fact that he worked with Cameron so much. And then you have Jamie Lee Curtis doing possibly one of the most sexiest scenes in any movie ever. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to cause a controversy, but I'm pretty sure that's the scene that made me realize that I was a straight man. Like Arnold, I think you're right. I think it's like peak Arnold, where you get all the action and the lows, but like he's personable. Like he is playing a character. Like he's versatile. Like I think after Hercules in New York, he stopped playing just meatheads. Basically, it's just like pinnacle Schwarzenegger, right? But at the same time, Jamie Lee Curtis, this is an awesome role for her. She hasn't done a lot else like this. It's one of her
Oscar
best
worthy.
performances. I would say so.
Completely reinvented her. Like she just went mainstream right after this movie. And the opening scene of this movie is the best parody, not parody, of like a Bond movie where it's like, this is how like Schwarzenegger just like punch up through the ice, and then 2 seconds later the editing he's got his tuxedo on. It's like he goes upstairs, he does his shit, and then like when they find out about him, like you hear the machine guns going off, but no, he's not getting shot, and then he knocks the two dogs' heads together. It's all just too easy, but at the same time it's so entertaining.
I love Bill Paxton in this movie.
Oh my god! Oh yeah. Well, the second act of the movie is like hit or miss. You either love it or you don't love it. You know,
well,
I fucking love it.
He's rough to watch, but I think he's fun to watch. But I really love Bill Paxton in this film because like I know Schwarzenegger's from Austria, but he's the most American thing we've ever produced. You know what I mean? And this film establishes in a bunch of different places, but especially with Bill Paxton, that this is not a Bond film. This is how American spies work. We're, crass, we like to joke around, and when we fuck people, we're married to them.
Pair of titties make you want to stand up and beg for buttermilk. Ass like a 10-year-old boy.
I don't know if James Cameron has written someone from scratch that is as funny and as interesting as Simon is. Dude, he's so perfect. Like,
what about their husbands?
Dickless.
He just happens to like stumble into this woman's life who is married to someone that she does not know is an international spy, and it's just so fucking great because it's such a it's that's what makes this movie so special. Is it's like, here's your like kind of semi parody but semi serious Bond thing, and then there's this like plot with the Bill Paxton thing, and then the movie kicks into some extraordinary action scenes towards the end. That the bridge scene, the fact that they shot all of that practical. Even Jamie Lee Curtis hanging off of the fucking plane. There's a little bit of CGI at the end with the Harrier jet, and stuff like that, but it's still believable.
Holds up.
It's believable because of the way the movie's presented to you too. Like the you're fired, like the rocket shooting off of the sand spider. It's like, that's funny because the movie never takes itself that seriously. It's never parody. It's a perfect action comedy. When I was 16 years old, I watched this every fucking day. Every day. And sometimes I would just watch certain scenes and dissect those scenes. True Lies was the last movie he did before he went into that Oscar territory and really shifted his career. It's kind of got that soft spot for me because it was that last one. It's the last thing he's ever done with Schwarzenegger, which sucks.
What can I say? I'm a spy.
That was another one that was going to be on my list if I didn't limit this to, I took out action comedies from a possibility, even ones that are grounded, because I had True Lies in the possibility because it is still kind of a just contemporary action film, but the comedy element of it had me say, and it's not ultra violent. There's not a lot of on-screen excessive violence, and so I just kind of, for me personally, that's why I kept it off my list, but it was very close.
There's a lot of F-bombs and there's some good violence in the end section, but
if Jamie Lee had actually taken off her panties and top, then I would have been voting for this.
There's a certain comparison that I hold between Last Action Hero and True Lies.
A lot of people say that, yeah.
Is Last Action R? That doesn't make sense.
No.
I don't think it is.
No, it's not R.
Well, unless you are talking about the director's cut that has a scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger and the guy from Game of Thrones make love.
Oh yeah, no, Toads.
What
No,
you're
it's
talking
the
about?
one.
Okay.
It's the one where Mercedes Rule gives a hand job in the theater.
Charles Dance.
Yes,
To the old dude who runs the place.
Thank you so much for watching Best of R-rated action movies.
Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Love you guys. Thank you so much for being manly men talking about R-rated movies. We'll do it again soon, guys. We drink your cinema.
Get to the chopper.